my name is Stephanie Carroll and I am author of historical fiction novel A White Room. Today I'm going to be talking to you about my third novel that I have planned to write. I'm working on a second one right now, so this one is going to be my third. It doesn't have an official title yet, but the working title is It Felt Like Abandonment. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a summary explanation of what it's going to be about, and then I'm going to talk to you about some of the research that I'm doing for it. Here's the working pitch. And the names that I'm using here are not the official character names. I just needed to name them before, because this isn't going to make sense without names. So, if you read this book someday and these names aren't right, don't go crazy on me. Alright, Sarah believes she is cursed. Her mother failed her, and her mother's mother failed. And she knows if she ever had a child, she would fail too. She has no idea how curses work, but when she's diagnosed with uterine cancer and faces chemotherapy and death, it all makes sense. However, before she can even start treatments, her needy mother, Maggie, calls hysterical because her sister Juliet died. Although she and her mother haven't spoken in almost a year and she is facing her own death, Sarah cannot say no. While cleaning out Juliet's home and meeting old friends and family, Sarah discovers questions and connections about her grandmother, Rayella, who used to play with crystal balls and seances in the 1920s. Maggie shrugs it off, but Sarah starts to wonder how real curses actually are and whether or not they can be broken. So the idea behind this book is that there is this woman who is living in modern times who believes that her mother failed her and her mother's mother failed her mother, and so on. And she thinks that if she would ever have a child, she would fail that child too. And so when basically she gets uterine cancer, which is going to make her sterile, she's thinking it's this curse. And at first this is something she's just kind of made up in her head, but as she starts to discover things about her family's history, she starts to wonder if there really is a curse. And maybe she's getting carried away because of all the emotions and mental things that are happening because she's facing death and she's at a person's funeral, or maybe there really is a curse. But the research that I'm working on right now has to do with the grandmother, whose name is Rayella, maybe, and who played with crystal balls and seances in the 1920s. This is something that actually happened. It was a huge movement in America and eventually England. It started in America, and it was called Spiritualism. This is the thing you see references to in movies sometimes about, people in the 1920s. That's why I got my hat. People in the 1920s, doing seances and weird things like that. So one of the books that I got to research for this, and I'm so excited about it, is called A History of Ghosts: The True Story of Seances, Mediums, Ghosts, and Ghostbusters. And one of the things that's so super exciting about this and makes me giddy is that it is written by the father of a very famous actor who starred in and wrote a movie about ghosts. And that movie was called Ghostbusters. And the son is named Dan Aykroyd. It's his father that wrote this book. And Dan Aykroyd actually did a foreword for it. So I think that's really exciting. Basically, Dan Aykroyd's father, when he was a child, his parents did seances in his house. And he and his brother would watch them, secretly from the door. So it's a really interesting book. And it's the start of my research. And spiritualism was a kind of a really crazy movement in American history, and it involved Houdini and a lot of really famous people. And basically this is where, people would sit around at a table. Sometimes they would have a medium, somebody who claimed they could talk to spirits, and sometimes they wouldn't. And they would try to contact people who had died. This is not the same as modern day ghost stuff that focuses more on scary stuff. Modern day ghost hunting usually involves, trying to contact murderers and scary people who are dead and would haunt a place. These types of seances were attempts to usually contact loved ones that had died. And they would ask them to knock I'm not going to do it right now because it'll make my dogs bark and ruin the video. But they would knock on tables. They would ask the ghosts to knock on tables. They would have special objects like a trumpet. They had like the spiritualist trumpet that they would try to get ghosts to float. I have a picture of it in this book, in A History of Ghosts by Peter H. Ackroyd. See, that's the trumpet that they would try to get to float. They also had, the mediums would sometimes write spirit writings on these chalkboard tablets. There's one in this book that actually is supposedly from Uncle Andrew Ackroyd that says, "My dear nephew, I am not far off. I can be of help. Command me at any time. Uncle Andrew Ackroyd." So those were the kinds of things that that would happen during these seances. Another really trippy thing that would happen, and they actually made a horror movie that played with this idea, but it's a horror movie that's name escapes me right now, of ectoplasm. Ectoplasm was this weird stuff that would form in pictures, and it was supposed to be ghosts trying to form themselves. And there's all these really old-timey photos of the 1920s with people, and there's like a blob. And ectoplasm always looked like a blob. It didn't look like the ghost stuff that we would see in pictures and ghost hunters shows today. It was always weird looking, like, it looked like physical matter stuff. I actually have a picture of it. Hold on, I know this is bad blogging form, but I'll be right back. I'm back. Terrible blogging form, I'm sorry. You got to see a little bit more of my office though. Lucky you. I have a picture in this other book that I got of ectoplasm, and it's kind of creepy, and honestly, the ectoplasm looks so weird that it makes you pretty sure that it was fakes doing it. But some of them don't look so weird. Some of them actually look real. See, that stuff coming out of her nose and piling onto her shoulder is ectoplasm. And if you look at the stuff on her shoulder, it's like it's sort of forming into what looks kind of like a face. And a lot of time these ectoplasm blobs would look like arms, hands, faces. See, this is another one. This picture where a hand is supposedly coming out of this woman's dress and somebody there shaking the hand. But the picture, and I don't know how well you can see it on video, the hand looks kind of like really bad movie effects or something. This book, by the way, is The Spiritualists by Ruth Brandon, about the passion for the occult in the 19th and 20th centuries. This is another book that I'm doing research for this third book. So spiritualism, of course, had a dark side because they're dealing with ghosts. There were encounters with negative spirits, and obviously from me saying that a lot of times the ectoplasm looked fake, there were a lot of fakes, and a lot of people thought the whole spiritualism movement was just a bunch of bogus. Houdini, the magician, was one of those people. He actually called for a huge investigation of spiritualism and had all these claimed mediums come in and, you know, tried to make them prove that they were contacting spirits. In the end, the whole thing was inconclusive. But it's all very interesting, the history of it. And that's basically what I'm researching. So far, I haven't done a lot of research, so I can't tell you much more about what it was all about. I do know that they had sometimes magical cabinets, spirit cabinets, that either the medium or somebody else would be put into as a way to draw out the spirits somehow. Like it was supposed to be like a doorway from the spirit world, I guess. Of course, this is also where a lot of people think that trickery happened. I thought it might be interesting in a story to have, like, you know, some crazy spiritualist put a kid in there and scare the crap out of him. But that might be a little bit too similar to The Sixth Sense or something. Anyways, here's where this whole spiritualism craze came from. And I'm sort of summarizing this from the flap cover, the jacket copy of the Spiritualist. Basically, there was two American girls, who were the first ones to have, like, supposedly a real encounter with ghosts. And it was during a seance, and there was knocking that happened intelligently when they were asking questions. They claimed what happened was that they were hearing this weird knocking. And so, for some reason, they got the idea to start asking questions. Knock once for yes, knock twice for no, and the knocks were constantly doing it properly. Now, according to some, that happened, and that ultimately was what started the Spiritualist movement. According to others, the girls that heard this, and they were younger girls, later admitted that they were cracking their toes on the floor to trick somebody into thinking this whole thing happened. Who to believe depends on what you read. I haven't read enough evidence yet to say either way. But a lot of people really believe this was all, a lot of people believe that Spiritualism, the movement, was all very genuine. They believe, sure, there were some hoaxes, you can't avoid that, but overall, that there was actual spiritual contact taking place. And a lot of people today would probably agree that that was maybe the first historical, ghost hunting stuff that ever happened, because people still do that today. So really, also, our ghost hunting stuff that happens today probably all originated with the Spiritualists in the 1920s. It started earlier than the 1920s, like 1900s. Turn of the century, which is my time period. So a good example of showing somebody who believes and doesn't believe, in Dan Aykroyd's foreword in this book, it's very obvious that for him and his family, the whole idea of ghosts and stuff was a constant thing in their life, and they've seen things and experienced things, and they believe that it's real. In this one, so far, just from what I've read of it, there seems to be a lot of evidence suggesting that it was all hoaxes. The author definitely tries to be non-biased, and you can tell that just from the jacket copy, but it seems to be showing more evidence that a lot of these things were fake. So it's kind of a controversial, what's your opinion type thing. And I think it's just gonna really make an interesting topic for this book, and I'm very excited about it. And I hope you guys think it sounds interesting too. Feel free to send me comments or thoughts on my blog or my website. My website, if you didn't find my blog on it, is www.stephaniecarroll.net. And my blog is http://penguins-and-nonsense.blogspot.com. You can also find me at Carroll Books on Twitter, Facebook, Google+, Goodreads, and LinkedIn, and Tumblr. So look for me out there. I'm in the internet big time. And look for my book. I hope you think it's interesting. Thanks for watching.